Well, today's talk is a two-part talk. One is on RSV and one is a little COVID stuff as well. So I charge double, but I only, for travel, I only charge once. Okay. Is that okay, Peter?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first part of the talk is on respiratory syncytial virus. And you can see in the upper right-hand corner, a scanning electron micrograph using labeled.
It looks really dangerous.
Well, we'll find out. That's the whole point of this talk.
They're all short points.
That's the whole point of the talk.
Don't confuse it with the
Label
fact.
and it's labeled with fluorescent anti-RSV antibodies. Now, listen carefully. It's going to come up over and over to the fusion protein. Okay, that's sort of the most exciting part of this. Let me see how I go to the next slide here. Okay, so we're going to talk about the RSV virus, and so the R is for respiratory because it causes respiratory symptoms. Syncytial is syncytium, in biological terms. It is a cell with multiple nuclei. Fungi are a syncytium. That's how they are. And it was thought that the brain was a syncytium until the silver stains came out, and it could then stain the cell nucleus and then the axons and dendrites to see that it wasn't a syncytium. And that's elicited by the fusion protein on the virus. And the virus is an antisense. That means it doesn't code for anything, but rather it gets into the cell, it replicates, it forms a double helix of RNA, and then that a complementary double helix is what contains the genetic information of exons that run down the ribosome and produce the various protein structures of the virus. So, and if we look, so let's look under the hood a little bit. So what we have here, this circle here is the nucleocapsid. Think of it like a space capsule that envelops the viral RNA. And here's the single-stranded negative sense RNA. And the other very important point is here's the fusion protein sitting on the viral nucleocapsid, and that's what binds to the epithelium and then makes it fuse with others. It's very much like the COVID M spike with a specific binding domain, just like COVID, and that, like a lock and key, it goes into in this case, it locks into a certain site on the.
So is this the same family as a coronavirus because of the spiking stuff?
No. It's just a common trait that viruses. That's how viruses all do. They have a way of binding a specific site, and it's called a lock and key theory, a lock and key model, where you have the lock on the cell, and the spike is the key. It can go exactly in. It has to have exactly the right conformation to go in. And if you file down one of the parts of the key, or if you add to it, it won't insert or it won't turn the lock.
So is that why certain viruses, like maybe a virus from an antelope or something, can't attack a human because the lock and key doesn't operate?
Correct. The chances are it has the same binding site, but it's evolved differently, so it's a different shape.
So why haven't we heard of this virus before the COVID outbreak?
Ted, you know what an old joke is? What a new joke is? A new joke is an old joke you haven't heard. Respiratory RSV has been around for a long time. The fusion protein has been known for many, many years. Okay,
Jerry, on that diagram, you had two labels that looked like they were the same thing: fusion protein and attachment glycoprotein.
No, they're different. They're different structures. No, this helps attach, but the fusion protein also attaches. This helps to glom onto the cell, and the fusion protein also gloms onto the cell as well.
Okay.
So is this based on a TEM actual image of the virus, or is this somebody's PowerPoint slide?
This is just somebody's PowerPoint slide. The virus looks like this. It doesn't look like, it's not a circle. The nucleocapsid is whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
These are highly evolved, and they have to be. So the manifestations, here's a key point. Manifestations RSV. In the very young, which means less than 2 years old, the kids get bronchiolitis. The bronchioles are the very smallest airways before you reach the alveoli. And they swell. And like the hole of a donut, as the donut rises, the hole gets smaller. And resistance increases to the tremendously, and they have a lot of difficulty breathing, and it's a marker for the onset of asthma. It's hard to know why it does that, but it does do that. And then the middle years, it's just a common cold or asymptomatic. And then the elderly, now I can't believe this, but this is the data I can find. They now call the elderly greater than 60. I thought the elderly was anybody older than me. So I don't know, but it does.
Important point. Old age has a very specific definition. 20 years older than you are now.
Okay, right. So definitions are weird, but this is where the data comes from. So if you look at nursing home residents and you test them for RSV, you can test for antibodies, you can do cultures, whatever you test for, about 5% to 10% per year, nursing home residents. Now, this is a very closed environment. They sit around all the time. One person comes in with RSV, it goes everywhere, just like the COVID did.
Well, they're not sitting here in the
Well, yeah, put in 55 more patients, all who were about to fall on the floor. Okay, so that's what you get. That's where the numbers come from. And of that group, about 10 to 20% will have some manifestation of pneumonia, whether it's radiographic or clinical, whatever it is, which is 0.5 to 2% of all nursing home residents. And then the death rate is 2 to 5% of that group. So it's 0.1 to 0.5% of all nursing home residents. So it's pretty common. It's common because it's sort of a common cause of death. Sort of. Now, if you want to put it in perspective, here is in the elderly, greater than 60, who knows? Influenza causes about 37,000 deaths per year, and RSV causes about 8,000. So it's about a quarter what influenza does. Because influenza goes around nursing homes too. So making the diagnosis. Signs and symptoms was non-specific. There's just an upper respiratory tract infection for all intents and purposes. And then you do rapid antigen testing. And what you have is an antibody with something on it that will fluoresce. And the antibody binds to the virus, and then you shine ultraviolet light on it, and it fluoresces. You can see it.
Similar to the COVID test.
Yeah, and all you do is look at it. But that's only in kids because adults don't shed enough virus, so you can't see it. It might be fluorescent, but you can't see it.
We do shed the COVID virus enough, so yeah.
COVID, we do,
but
we don't with the RSV. There's enough units. And so we can do a PCR. PCR, in which you take a unique segment of the particular virus that's not found in anything else. You multiply it 15, 17 times, and then you take a complementary, in this case, would be RNA strand that's radio labeled and fluorescent, that's usually radio labeled, and it will bind to it, and they wash everything off, and you see the fluorescence or the radioactivity. And then there are viral cultures can be done, but nobody does them because the turnaround time is too slow, and patients are already better, and it's not very sensitive because it's just hard to culture.
Now, you said you gave us the percentage that died.
Yeah.
Are there a middle group, the equivalent of like long COVID?
No.
People, so you either get better or you die.
Yeah.
But mostly you get better.
Almost everybody gets better.
Right. Yeah.
And like all respiratory viruses, you can get them multiple times. So the prevention is a common sense part. You avoid, if they have RSV, you stay away from them. You could wear a mask, I suppose. Share intimate objects because if it gets on your hands and it gets in your nose and mouth. Hand washing after contact, and cover their mouth or your mouth when you're coughing and sneezing, should you have it. And then the more scientific parts are passive immunization and active immunization. So passive immunization is done commonly in kids because little kids, you don't want them to get RSV, you don't want them to get bronchiolitis, you don't want them to get pneumonia, respiratory failure, you don't want them to get asthma. And you want the pregnant women to get it as well, so they won't give it to the child when the child is first born. So
it doesn't pass through in the placenta.
It would if she has the antibodies, but you don't know if she does.
Okay.
So one of the old tried and true methods is take IVIG, which is intravenous immunoglobulin, and that's collected when you give a unit of blood, the red cells are sedimented off and they go into this bag. And then the serum goes here and then it lets clot. And then you have plasma, which is serum without the blood clotting stuff. And the immunoglobulins are in that floating around. And that is either heated or irradiated, so there's nothing biologically alive in that IVIG. And then since so many people in the population have had RSV, there'll be some anti-RSV antibodies, neutralizing antibodies. They'll just be there. But then with the more modern creation of monoclonal antibodies to the RSV, palivizumab was out there, and that for children. But that has to be given monthly for 5 months to provide a measure of protection. And the newer one now is nirsevimab, and that's a long-acting monoclonal antibody for children. And it's pretty interesting because what they did, and it was understood what they were doing, they claimed, they substituted 3 amino acids in the antibody, and it increased the half-life. So one shot lasts about 6 months. So the kid doesn't have to go to the doctor and get a shot and scream every month. They have to go there once and get a shot and scream.
Is the shot in the muscle or in the interviews?
In the muscle. And so, but I couldn't find what those 3 amino acids did. I assumed that it increased serum protein binding, so it acts as a time release.
It changes the three-dimensional conformation.
Oh, I know that, but I don't know what it binds to.
You mean what antibody it binds to?
No, that is the antibody that they've manufactured.
Yeah.
What does it bind to
What protein?
What protein does it bind to?
What was the same one?
Same one as what?
As native.
As what?
Native.
No, the native one doesn't, so it has a short half-life.
You still could bind to it.
Well, there'll be some serum binding.
And
Well, I see what you mean. Probably the same site, but
Yes,
more.
exactly.
That's the best idea I've heard.
Well, that's usually how it's done.
Yeah, okay.
Usually what happens.
Oh, so that's why it was well directed, because they
Yeah.
knew what they would.
Yeah.
They knew where the key was.
So they're trying.
The lock was. They knew where the lock was. They just had to put the key in.
You want to get. this
Yeah.
result. That's
Yeah.
what you do.
That's probably
I
it.
don't understand what you guys just said.
Well, we'll repeat it. What I said, they didn't. How did they know what to do? What 3 amino acids? What he said, the binding site, which does keep the half-life of the normal binding site for the normal antibody, was the target. It wasn't a mysterious target. So they just took 3 amino acids that bind to that target.
So they changed 3.
Changed 3.
Of the target.
Yeah. And so they changed, so that they knew what they were aiming for. It wasn't just, well, what can we attach this to?
Right. That's how it's done all the time now.
So now we're going to get a little to the adults, where we do active immunization like COVID and everything else. And there are two products, and we're going to talk about RSV, and it's a very clever name, RX virus. Okay, so you know in what's called ethical drugs, which is prescription drugs, you can't have a product claim in it. You can't have a product claim like it can't say like a birth control cannot be called Pregnot or Embryo. You can't do that. You have to be, and they wanted to have minoxidil. They wanted to call it Regain, but they couldn't, so they called it Rogaine. The only one that ever really got away with it was low pressure. Yeah. They got away with it, but you really can't have a product claim. So, but RXV is RX virus. That was pretty clever, I have to admit. So RXV, it's a stabilized version of the RSV F fusion protein. So they knew what they were doing too.
What does stabilized mean?
Stabilized means it doesn't get metabolized quickly.
Doesn't what?
You can transport it, it doesn't get metabolized quickly. And so, and what they used was structure-based vaccine design. In other words, they figured out what the whole fusion protein looked like. And that was what Moderna did way back when original SARS 2003 was in Asia, poorly transmitted, just died out by itself. And Moderna was working on purely theoretical. And they started shortly after that, like 06 or something, to define the whole protein structure and its primary structure, the amino acids, and its secondary structure, how it bends, and then its tertiary structure, how the sulfhydryls attach, and then some quaternary structure stuff that twists beyond that, to just figure out how the whole thing worked. And then this was applied to the RSV fusion protein to define its structure and binding domain. And it took them a lot less time because the technology had been worked out by a number of companies, of which Moderna was one, but everybody was doing the same thing. It's kind of everybody had, the light was on. It's one of those things that there are times when somebody brought this up. There are times that some things are inevitably going to be discovered, and the fact that Peter Albert discovered it, he gets the greatest because he happened to get his paper out on the 13th, and you got your paper on the 14th, and it's too bad. So it gets the Albert method, but people are going to discover it.
Usually it's the other way around in my life.
Oh, yeah. You're just 2 days late on the paper club.
Yeah.
So this generates antibodies and long-term immunity against the RSV fusion protein.
What does long-term mean?
Years.
So in other words, right now, I got my RSV shot a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna need another one next year.
Well, I don't know that particular point. I have not seen that written. But like you take your hepatitis B shot, and if you get a good take, that's it, you're done.
Right.
And hepatitis A is 10 years anyway, and people don't know after that.
A lot of it has to do like with the flu shots, how your immune system is responding.
Well, the flu varies. The flu.
I know, but the RSV has the same sort of thing.
Does it change?
We don't
Does it?
know. Yeah, we
Are there
just
many
don't.
strains
Yeah,
will change?
There's lots of mutations happening all the time, like with
For RSV?
viruses. Yeah, RSV, any virus.
Well, some will mutate.
How specific is that fusion protein to this virus?
It's on the virus. It's unique. It's unique.
No, but how specific is it? How many are there other viruses that use the same fusion protein?
No, they don't. No, and they don't cause sensation. That's unique to the
Unless
RSV.
it's a family, but that's getting into weeds. You don't want to
So now let's look at the reduction. Now here's where there are. Who said there are lies, damn lies, in statistics?
Disraeli.
Okay, so this will be in that folder. RSV reduction is 82% in healthy people. And what they did in their study was they had 12,000 odd subjects, and in the placebo,
Large subjects.
they were odd. Well, because it's actually even number, 12, 4, 6, 6, even number of subjects. They divided into two groups, and the placebo group had 40 cases, and the RSV had 7 cases. Statistically, absolutely significant. And they looked at people with at least one comorbidity, and there was a 95% reduction. So that's pretty good. But if you're sitting at the office at the GSK, they have a charge of $300 per dose. That's looking some serious coin when there are 50 million people.
What's comorbidity?
This is reduction in what?
Yeah. What's that?
This is reduction in what?
In infection.
Oh, infection. So the comorbidity affects the infection rates independently of other things like death rates.
They may be different populations because comorbidity people stay together, whether it's nursing homes or other places. I wondered about that, Ted, but you're probably testing a little bit different cohort.
some of their disease.
But that's what they've reported. And if your cost per dose is $300, that's pretty serious coin. But now 300 isn't really the number. That's the list price, and it's just a multiplicity of prices that organizations pay. CVS pays, Blue Cross pays. There's a multiplicity of prices. So I don't know really what the price is, but I had to pick a number, so I just picked the list price and left it at that. So there'll be a lot of times now because of the variations. I'm a little bit talking through my hat about how much something is and what how it's a numerical value, because it's hard to really know. Now I want to take a sidebar here on the idea of death rate, because they say, well, it reduces the death rate. Well, how do you calculate death rate? One way is directly from the disease. You got the disease and you died. Okay. Like getting shot by a bullet in the heart and you die. Pretty clear. And that's this group here. Then you can have a secondary complication of the disease. You were sick, you were lying in bed, you got deep venous thrombosis, you got pulmonary emboli, and you died. But you didn't die from the virus, you died from bed rest. Okay, you're gonna get group B. You add group A plus group B. But then any condition, death from any condition or disease, of any sort while having active RSV disease. You can fall down a flight of stairs, you can be in a car accident, you can be in a plane crash, scuba diving accident, but you're going to get more people dead. And then if you have death at the time of disease or shortly thereafter, which is usually about a month, you're going to get a composite of all of them together. Now you say, well, which one should I use? Well, sometimes it's hard to know if they died directly from the disease. It's just hard, even if you have the data, it's hard to know. Because they had heart failure, chronic heart failure, it's hard to know. It's hard to get it from medical records for sure. And for any other diseases, now you got to figure out what they had and how serious it was. So it's hard to do. But death at the time or shortly after the disease, I'll tell you, as a doctor, it's easy to know when somebody's dead. Okay? So it's
a lot of training.
Yeah, right. I've done rounds. Many people did. I've never been wrong. So
no one's complaining.
Right, no one complained. So you have a very clear and discrete endpoint. So often they use this number, which inflates the death. It increases the death rate as stated. And so it is what it is. So we do some math. Now I'm going to talk, is he showing up here? Yeah. Enrico Fermi. I'm using the Fermi methods, where you just pick some general numbers because apparently it works. But you'll notice that he only lived to be 53 years old. He died of gastric cancer at a very young age.
He worked with radioactivity very closely for gastric and blood.
There you go. There you go. So if we reduce, now let's just take, we reduce the RSV by 82% healthy adults. Well, if we immunize the entire US population over 65, which is 50 million, that's a number I could get, with RXV, we would prevent 8,000 deaths per year. So at $300 a dose times 50 million divided by 8,000 is $190,000 per death per year. Well, that's pretty expensive. As you look at the use of the medical dollar. And frankly, I'm not entirely sure that some people here are worth that much. We may have to take a vote, but I'm just saying.
Excuse me?
I'm just saying.
Don't think so.
Or look at it this way.
Well, I've asked that question about helmets and safety belts.
That's right.
And I've never seen an answer.
Well, for highways, improvements, they have the expected value, it used to be $250,000 per head.
Okay. Is that what it is?
Well, it used to be, I don't know if they updated it.
Well, more drivers now. So we're going to take a long run for a short slide here. We're just going to use upper bounds because that's all I can figure out. If we take the upper bound, 10% of nursing home residents annually have RSV. That's one RSV call per resident every 10 years. So we would take an annual, and now that's the upper bound. So we'll apply it to the 50 million. Annual RSV injection for 12 and a half years to prevent one infection, almost all of which are colds. So that's kind of a long run for a short slide. And your chance of dying over age, whatever we said, is about
so what are you defining a cold to be in this case?
A snotty
the temperature
nose
goes below 32.
In Yiddish, it would be smakacha, a runny nose. Okay.
Because you're saying one RSV quote unquote cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
not protected against anything else.
So we don't know whether this cold is a set of symptoms that resemble the RSV symptoms.
No. RSV document. RSV document.
RSV document.
We're only talking about RSV. We're not talking about 15 rhinoviruses. We're talking about RSV.
Okay.
So your chance of dying is so remote when you remember that COVID for the elderly was 2%. Okay, this is incredibly low. So when people talk about it, now the companies, so when the companies wave their hands, I love the ads, wave the 82% reduction, that's the numerator. But the world is filled with numerators and denominators. And if you don't tell people the denominator, only the numerator, they don't know any more than they did before. Now, the CDC.
Hey, wait a minute. You have to have a denominator in order to get that percentage.
That's right. I put in the denominator.
So it can't be just the numerator. What was
no, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Is so when they wave their hands, they say there's an 82% reduction. You say 80% reduction of what? Okay, so the fountain of all wisdom, the people I'm very fond of, is the CDC. And the CDC says adults 60 years of age and older may receive a single dose of RSV vaccine using shared clinical decision making. So they punted. Okay, which was the right thing to do.
Your doctor, shared clinical decision making.
I mean, you go talk to your doctor, you say, should I get the RSV virus?
He says yes.
No vaccine.
A virus, I'm the vaccine rather. Should I get the RSV vaccine? And the doctor's like, well, you know, or should my mother in the nursing home get or something? And say, well, she's in a nursing home and she's elderly and she is maybe so.
So if I'm the people at the Medicare and Medicaid services, I don't want to pay for this damn thing because it doesn't buy me any benefit really in the long term.
Well, what they say, the problem is with their rules and how they make decisions. Then, and if it's approved by the FDA and it's been shown to be safe and effective, they don't have a choice. They can't. They themselves don't have Medicare can't say, yeah, sure, but we're not going to pay for it. They can't do that.
So is this why you used a punter in the first place, and in the second place a left-footed punter?
Oh,
yeah. No, actually, I turned the graphic around because I wanted it to face the verbiage.
Because right now, a lot of the dosages are for public health, right? So you never even talk to your doctor. Just sign up online and show up.
Well, and that creates a problem. Now, it didn't create a problem for COVID for the elderly because the data was so clear you didn't need to get a second opinion. Okay? You didn't need that. But there are many situations where you need somebody who actually knows who you are and what your situation is. So,
all I know is my wife signed me up for next week to get a shot.
Well, you just spent $190,000 of Charlie's money.
Now, is there a second worry? In other words, can getting the vaccine harm some percentage of the people?
By definition, probably the answer is yes.
Yeah, well, here's the problem. When you give it to 12,000 people, you're not going to, it's likely see Guillain-Barré in that 12,000 cohort, right? But you really need a bigger cohort. You'll know when it happens, but when a larger group of people get it, then you'll see the low frequency adverse reactions.
Oh, so are there any statistics by age? Because, by the Jerry Slate test, 60 years of age is young.
Right, no, they didn't break it down. No, good question. They did not, that's what the cohort, they didn't break it down to, 60, like they did with COVID, 60 to 70, because I had 12,000 people. COVID had many thousands. So we didn't do 60 to 70, 70 to 75, 75 to 80, they didn't do that. So we don't have that yet. That's a very cumbersome and expensive study to do that. There's lots of money in it for COVID, but that's a very expensive study to do.
But I read somewhere that 100% of the dead people did not get RSV.
Yeah, right. That's right. So,
Jerry, one other question is: you're talking about a cohort with giving the shots. You're not talking about having the group reduce the incidence of RSV.
Did we say?
Repeat your question, Mike. I don't think it was clear.
I mean, there's got to be a kind of a group immunity if you have a lot of inoculations.
Are you talking about herd immunity? Well, you will get some herd immunity, but people are susceptible to recurrent respiratory infections. So herd immunity is not like hepatitis B, where you have permanent immunity and you're not going to get it again, and you're just not going to have it. So you get some herd immunity. You do anytime you immunize a population.
Now with COVID, they said that there were, as I recall, 6 different things: diabetes, kidney problems, and others that made you more likely to get
sicker.
Ill,
yeah,
or sicker.
Yeah.
Is the same thing true for RSV? In other words, are people who have certain illnesses more likely to get badly sick from RSV?
I didn't see that factoid. They're more likely to be ill because they go into heart failure. They go into their marginal renal function, go into renal failure. they're a little less renal perfusion, a little hypotensive. Things happen to worsen the underlying
The
comorbidity.
the reason behind my question is, if you look at the people who are seniors.
Yeah.
Many of them have a variety of illnesses.
Right.
And there might be a subset, therefore, of those seniors for which getting the RSV vaccine is more important.
That's my point. That's called shared decision making. So when you have a cardiac ejection fraction, normal ejection fraction is 60%. When you have a cardiac ejection fraction of 5%, you're right on the edge of heart failure. You don't want that person to get a fever of 102, and it doesn't matter what cause. So you don't want to do that. So you want to prevent all illnesses. It's not really not an RSV decision. It's just a clinical decision. You don't want them to be tipped over into failure.
So this, is this going back? Is this what we mean by comorbidity?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that
Multiple things wrong with you.
right. And then
That's the thing morbidity that she did.
no, morbid is.
You haven't watched enough stuff on TV.
Morbidity. No, that's called mortality. Morbidity is illness, and a morbid is just a disease.
Morbid is what I mean.
Yeah, and yeah. So morbid condition could be heart failure. When I had a dachshund, the dachshund, and then they end in OSIS, so it's cirrhosis of the liver. It's a morbid condition. When we had a dachshund, the dachshund in the morning had halitosis. That's a morbid condition. It's just how the word works. It's definitional presence of disease.
Yeah, so Jerry, what you're indirectly what you're saying with this discussion is that the statistics on the death rates are actually underestimates because this is for RSV. They're underestimates because if somebody dies of heart failure, the death certificate will not say RSV, it will say heart failure.
Well, yeah, but if you have an RSV positive test and it's reported, or you're doing a study, you're going to 12 nursing homes and report it, you have the evidence of RSV infection.
And is that correctly, or is it just simply heart failure?
Well, the presumption is that the COVID put the person into heart failure, but that's not a conclusive. They could also be in an airplane crash, and it has nothing to do with COVID, with RSV. It's a funny statistic. It's an easy one to get, and it's an easy one to use, but it's a funny statistic. So you just gotta. So when they say things, you just have to know what underlies those things.
And it depends upon how the data was recorded. Sometimes the data isn't recorded properly.
Absolutely.
And while there may be a comorbidity with the death, it's not reported properly, and therefore
Absolutely.
we have no clue.
Death certificate studies are useless. They're just useless.
Well,
Well, they show that.
why?
They do show you're dead. That they do.
They're 100%
Then what is useful if the death certificate isn't?
On cause.
asking people.
So now,
Before you go on, before you go on,
we're
just
going to go on to the second lecture.
Can I say one
before you go on
thing
for a second
about
here,
the
Jerry.
RSV?
1 second, Ted, 1 second. We have a question here, and then we can get back to you.
One thing about the RSV, one reason why CDC and other people are talking about getting RSV shot is how common it is in the population. In other words, how likely you are to be exposed to it. That's one reason why they push it to be done now. Just like with COVID and other things.
Well, they're not pushing it.
Likely.
They are not pushing it.
Pfizer
The
is.
companies are advertising like crazy. CDC is not pushing. They actually have a little wisdom in this one.
Well, but they make the public for not good, but they don't talk about flu so much.
Oh, yes, they do.
Yeah, not as much as the RSV.
Oh, yes, they do.
Yeah.
Oh, they really push the flu hard. It's way into the fall. They do every year. They get the flu shot. They push that hard, and that's there's good return.
Okay, that was a bad example. But there are other cause diseases that they don't push.
Well, this
But
product
they
is
tell
just
you what it is. They publish.
this product is new, and they had to come to some recommendation. You're not going to get a new recommendation on hepatitis B vaccine. You just go to their archives and you
Well,
get
but they've had these vaccines out for some time.
no. RSV is new.
So it's
So the two
piggybacking on the flu.
There were two that you showed.
Yeah, but
One was out for some time.
yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, the first one was
Something to do
out.
with that
Yeah.
time like that.
But then, maybe it's a response to the advertising. I don't know. CDC is a political organization, so I don't know.
It's more than that.
I don't know. I don't
I
know.
have to disagree with that one.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what motivates them to do anything.
When
We go on. Ted, go ahead. If you have something short, we can.
yeah,
go ahead.
when they quote the comorbidities, do they talk about only chronic comorbidities that are acutely being manifested? Like, for instance, let's say you have a virus that at the same time as you have a seasonal allergy, and you have the seasonal allergy throughout your life, but it hits only certain periods of time. And so at certain periods of time, you would have that as a comorbidity and you wouldn't the other way, right?
Well, seasonality is not a good example because it doesn't alter the immune response in any way. So
no, but it does alter the state of your nasal passages and things like that.
Well,
it might make you more or less susceptible to the.
Well, we'll make you more susceptible. It may make you more symptomatic. It won't make you more susceptible.
Well, if your nose is stoppered, to put it in a sort of discrete, crude terminology, if your nose is stoppered, you can't breathe through your nose, and you're not taking an antihistamine or something, that obviously changes how that virus can get to your nasal tissues.
Well, it gets into you breathe it orally, it gets down into the pharynx, it finds its way.
Yeah.
So, but comorbidities generally mean meaningful comorbidities, like heart failure, kidney failure, long-standing diabetes, which means you have other organ dysfunction. It's not because you have psoriasis.
Major organ dysfunction.
Right, or urticaria or something like that, major organ.
All right. Okay.
So now we're going to switch gears and go over to COVID and talk about some of the new stuff. But I wanted to sort of make it linear, because it's hard to see the new stuff unless you really have a linear idea of the old stuff. So first, and I have evidence of this, that I brought this point out when I gave my first talk on here on COVID, when COVID first started, that it would evolve from a pandemic to which means everywhere in the world, all over, to an epidemic. In general areas, some areas have it, some areas don't, to endemic, where it's just generally in the population. And we're really in sort of the end. We had a Delta boost, but we're really, I think, really more in the endemic period now. It's just going to drift here and mutate and drift. And the virus, I don't think I brought this up, but I wasn't sure. It's likely to self-attenuate, because viruses do this, because
why isn't it likely to activate?
I'm about to tell you. Because it's in the virus's self-interest to attenuate. Viruses don't care about you. If you have a virus like a norovirus, that you're exposed to it, and boom, you've got profuse diarrhea. You're in the bedroom, in the bathroom, and that's it. You're not out there spreading it around the movie theater. Hopefully, no. You're not. You're confined to home.
Depends on where it is.
Yeah, right. That's true. You're on a ship. That's why on shift it's a mess, in every sense. So it's likely that if it can just create a little sniffle or nothing, and you cough, and you go to the drugstore, and you go to the movies, and you go to the supermarket, you'll spread it better. You're a better spreader if you have milder symptoms, because you're circulating. And that was seen in Wuhan. The virus appeared in Wuhan probably in September of 19. And what they saw, Wuhan's a big city. It's not Lexington, it's a big city. And it popped up all over the city at the same time, which meant that subject A was asymptomatic, traveled a little bit, gave to subject B, who was asymptomatic, who traveled a little bit, trusted subject C, and then subject D, who insisted all they did was go to the supermarket once a week, came down with it, scattered all around the city because it had been transmitted by asymptomatic people. That's why it suddenly popped up everywhere. And that was obvious right from the beginning. People recognized that.
So, Jerry, being asymptomatic, is that because the virus has mutated from an asymptomatic virus?
No, it's because your immune response. You create correct immune response, but it's not really inflammatory that makes you sick. It's the inflammatory response that makes you sick.
So
the virus
my personal reaction.
Yes, the virus doesn't produce anything that makes you feel ill. It's your inflammatory response.
Right.
So now let's look at the BioBot data. Now this is my favorite website. The MWRA has been checking COVID virus in the water supply since March of 2020. The company that does it is called BioBot. And they have been checking it daily, although they said they want to reduce the checking weekly, but I don't think they did. And they look for viral fragments of the genome of COVID. And what's really interesting, like here, there were almost 20,000 copies of COVID virus in 1 milliliter of sewer water. That's a lot of copies for 20,000 RNA copies per milliliter. So that the collected waste that's come to the MWRA, 20,000 copies in every milliliter. That's a lot of COVID. And what makes it a good statistic and worthwhile following is that you don't have to worry about unreported cases or people didn't get tested. You don't have to worry about anything. You just take that waste and check it and you got it. Now, they on the website, I don't know if you've ever been to the MWRA website, they report South Shore, North Shore, and this is the composite, but the two match up. They really exactly the same.
The other thing is that this particular data is a preview. This precedes onset of
so many days.
Onset of disease in the population.
Right.
So it's a good predictor of what's
The
going
next
to
few
happen
weeks, yeah.
very soon.
Yes. So you can see one of the sets of dots is green and one is some orangey green. And
south and north.
South, right. The south and north, they're really the same.
Green and red.
Except here is a little bit different. So here's when SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, COVID-2, not SARS-1, which was 2003, appeared in California around, say, January, I think. And then you remember the Biogen had their first super spreader meeting around that time. You remember that? And that was the first super spreader meeting that we were aware of.
December.
Was it December?
Of 19. Yeah.
Of 19, right.
Yeah.
And that was the first super spreader event. And then all hell broke loose. And at that point, Tufts Medical School canceled all vacations and told people they couldn't travel out of the country. And they were really sort of ahead of the curve. And then the COVID vaccine came out in December 2020. It came out then, but everybody, including me, has a story about how they couldn't get it. And you may remember, the drugstores will give it. Well, you had to log on to CVS Lexington. There was no centralized computer. You had to give your name, your rank, your serial number, your medications, your address, your email, everything. And then you could see the appointments, and there were none. And then you go to the Burlington and you do the same Michigas and there'd be no appointments. Do you remember that? And so my wife and I spent 3 hours in February sitting in a snowstorm outside of Health One or whatever it is, and near the Stop and Shop, because they couldn't, it was so discombobulated, they couldn't figure out to say, well, by the way it looks, you'll come back in 3 hours, which would have been fine. I only don't live that far.
We went downtown to, not Mass General, but some
Temple Israel or something had it.
yes.
They had that in the parking lot.
We
Yeah.
went downtown to Temple Israel.
And it was crowded when you went?
Car, but we went right through and it was very.
It was hard to get appointment then at that time?
I don't think so.
What was it, winter?
It was March.
Oh, well, by then they'd worked. Remember, this came out in December. By March, I had gone down, my second shot was down to Foxborough, which was great fun.
Yeah.
They were very efficient. Remember how
Yeah,
efficient?
yeah.
They were very, first of all, you got to see the stadium.
That's
And
right.
they were great. They were very efficient. And what I remember is, you filled out the forms. You walked up to the person who was going to give the shot. They just wanted your name and one other identifier, and that was it. They took the piece of paper, they didn't start typing it. They didn't do that. They did that in the back room later. It was very efficient. But everybody's got a story. So everybody
First
so
shot was the second shot.
and there was some vaccine resistance among the various groups. They didn't want to get the shot, blah, blah, blah. But levels went down with the mRNA levels went down. And then we had the Delta strain come by, which is B16171, because a lot of these things call them numerically. And we had our spike, you remember that, there's a big spike. Yeah, there's a big spike there. And then it went back down. And then you had Omicron, who's BA1, and the various subvariants. And these are two important subvariants. Eris, which is the Greek goddess of discord, chaos, and strife. Perfect. And Pyrola, which sounds like a Greek god or something that you never heard of, but it's just pi and rho, the Greek letters put together, la 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 la, and that was it, Pyrola. So you can call it either by the name or by the number. And then since then, we've had little bumps. Where's my cursor? I'm delayed. I'll just look at my screen. We have little bumps over here and then a bump here. And now I don't know, it's going up a little, maybe going up a little bit.
This
now.
chart is a little bit deceptive because the height of the y-axis is really controlled by that one spike, which obviously is bad. But if I ignore that one and redid this chart
Right.
just for the bottom,
Yeah, I like that.
the bottom chunk
Right.
of this.
It's like throwing away the outliers.
That's right. Then you could see, I can't read the chart, but about 20% from the right-hand edge is a spike. It looks to be about 2 or 3 times as high
Right.
as the surrounding.
They're on a log scale.
So this is
Log scale.
well, people can't understand log scales on the internet.
Is it a log scale?
No. So you're right. Then people would have a better perspective of, oh, we're really having an increase. Maybe I'll wear a mask.
But I guess where I was heading is there some horizontal line in there above which one should be concerned and below which one
it's the x-axis is the horizontal line above which you should be concerned.
Well, he wants to know what the threshold-
No, I think that John's point, and he's right, but I don't know if it's meaningful.
But he's right.
It's always going to be,
endemic.
yeah, it's endemic,
Right.
so it's always going to be a non-zero number.
Right.
So therefore, if I look at the last 10% or so of the chart, the numbers look lowish. On the other hand, I can see an upward
Right.
tilt.
So that's why they started talking about kids wearing masks in school again.
Right.
You know, that subject is
But
going
I think what John's point is, if say the first delineation that you have there is 5,000 units.
Yeah.
Right? So if there was a line at 1,000 units, that went across there, and scientifically determined that below 1,000.
your risk is negligible.
It's endemic and it's like.
Well, you know, when I get
That's
home,
why- that's
John,
why-
I'm actually going to steal your idea. When I get home, so I want to do it from here, I'm going to take this graphic, stretch it out and cut off the top.
Right.
I can just do that.
You can get the raw data, I'm sure.
No, I don't need it. I got the raw data. I'm going to take this graphic, stretch it this way and cut off the top. So I'll cut it off here. I'll cut it off maybe at 5,000. I'll use your number. I'll cut it off at 5,000. I'll show you next week what the graphic looks
But
like.
if you,
The lowest
but
point
if
on
you're
the
doing it,
chart is 0.
Of
If,
course.
if
Well,
you,
not of course, there are lots of charts that change the bottom point and make things very deceptive. But this using 0 is much better.
Yeah.
Because you can see, again, I can't read it because the numbers are too small, but near the right-hand edge, it looks as if you're getting very close to 0. Not there.
Not
but
there.
A couple of inches.
No, but if you
below.
look at the orange dots, which is either south or north, it's clearly a non-zero number.
Right, so it's very, very low for some period of time.
Yeah.
Well, the
so,
March,
so
especially March to September. just past
so
summer.
do we have some reference
I can do that.
of this kind of thing for something else? Do
No.
they sample anything else as a background reference to measure parameters as to
They have done in the past. I can't tell you if they do it now. They have done hepatitis B. In the water supply. I don't know if they still do it because everybody's
Okay.
got immunized. So
It doesn't matter.
Because
really.
it would be
They're
interesting
doing
to
this
see
stuff
since
up to
how
millions.
the behavior of the public health services has not followed that path at all of what's seen in the water samples, because we had this huge lockdown that started very early when this visible number of samples that were contaminated was very low. And then it released when the visible number of samples was higher than that.
Hang on, Ted.
Ted, this is MWRA.
Yeah.
Not many cities were doing it way back.
And it also wasn't.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying
to say it was reliable.
The MWRA was not considered, was not considered, but the MWRA data was not ever, the CDC, New York City wasn't doing it. The CDC did the quote the MWRA.
No, I think
here's what's going on there, so therefore we should do this nationally. It just didn't.
I think the company came out of MIT and then they just went to the MWRA for some samples. And that's how it started, essentially, right?
Right. It started informally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is if you take a look at that as a sort of a reference for the overall behavior of that pandemic, epidemic, or endemic of the COVID, the public health policy has not at all related to that.
Because public health policy is a moving target, and it's so many things go into public health policy. There are political decision making, despite what you think. A lot of it's political. It's just an organization that.
But there's another very important thing. And
that's exactly the point. The point is that if you plot some sort of measure of public health policy on the same axis of horizontal axis, it's irrational behavior, basically.
And the bottom line here is you're dealing with 2020 hindsight. Today, we understand the data and can see the data and said we shoulda, coulda, woulda, mighta. And that's fine. And that's good because we know going forward, we pay more attention to this. And in fact, it was in the last year or so, during the height of the pandemic, it was heavily publicized. It was on the front page of the Globe every day. They had this chart. And so
also,
fine. And that's fine. So I think the point, your point is well taken, but it's a question of when the tests become accepted and understood to the point where people can make meaningful decisions about it. That said, I think John had a comment here, and then Bob, go ahead.
Okay, I guess my point is that in the beginning of COVID, there were a lot of people who were in nursing homes and already quite sick. And therefore, even when COVID came in, they became wonderful candidates for death. And it was the high number of deaths in those early months that got everybody very excited. Because almost everybody that I know had a mother or a great aunt or somebody who was elderly in a nursing home and who had either died from it or gotten very sick from it.
But we all know that stuff. I mean, people washing fruit with bleach. I mean, you read all these stories.
Well, the thing was that the primary rationale, which was one thing from the CDC that made perfect sense, is that we want all these precautions because we don't want to overwhelm the hospital system. Says you can't give people care who would survive. And that was the rationale. It wasn't to prevent one person from getting disease or another person. It was to prevent the hospital system from being overwhelmed. And although Fauci got in trouble for this because it was not well thought out how we did it, he said, you don't need to wear a mask, an N95 mask, because there weren't enough masks numerically to go around. They wanted the hospital personnel to get them. So instead of saying that, he said, oh, you don't need a mask. And then, of course, he got wasted because you needed a mask. So he didn't think it through all the way. But he was the highest paid federal employee, and job one in politics is to keep yours. So anyway, let's go on to the next slide here.
But before we go, Bob, you had a quick question?
I was just going to say pretty much what John said about why public health policy went the way it did when this wastewater detection was not as high. It did indeed have to do with what Jerry said about not overwhelming the healthcare system.
Good. Ted, we're going to hold your question so that Jerry can go on. Is that okay?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, let's keep going here now. And from this point on, it's going to be hard to take in the information and synthesize it. Don't even try, okay? Because it just gets into a technical morass, but it's worth hearing. And it was pretty interesting, I thought. Now, when the Omicron variant came here, the data, being data-driven, the data started to overwhelm. Now here on this chart here, this was formulated at the end of August, I guess. And look to the right here. Here are the Omicron strains that are circulating. And this is and each one has a color for this graphic. Each one has a color assigned to it, and it has a prevalence rate in the population, I guess, toward the end here, over here, where it's firm data, but maybe it's over here. And so if we looked at like XB15, here's XB15, and it's decreasing, 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 decreasing. And here's Eros AG5 is increasing, increasing, increasing. This other green, which I don't think has a name, FL151, is increasing. That's what's coming around on this graphic, okay, made in August. And these are projected variants here. You can see some of them are just going away. Now here, look at the same graphic here. Now here's XBB15. Let's look at it here. See, it's decreasing, decreasing, decreasing. Why did I pick that one? Oh, that's the Moderna one. That's the booster. So what a coincidence. So here's what the Moderna shot is going to protect you against over time.
Mostly.
Mostly.
You're saying that these shots are very specific to a.
Well, no, I'm going to go into that.
Yeah,
I haven't said.
yeah, that's part B of what it's gonna say.
So now, so we look at EG5, FL151, and XBB15. So these are coming in, and this one's going out. And the new one that people are talking about, BA286, wasn't even conceived of when they made this graphic.
Probably hadn't existed.
I think it did exist somewhere, but it wasn't around here. I don't know when they actually first discovered it, because at first they discovered, but you don't know if it's going to poop out and never get anywhere. You don't know.
It's only 4 months, so a lot of things can change.
Yeah. So now here we go crazy. What we know about the Moderna monovalent booster vaccine against XBB 1.5 decimals. So neutralizing immunoglobulin means that it manufactures it's an RNA that makes you make a neutralizing immunoglobulin. The neutralizing immunoglobulin binds to the M spike binding domain so that it can't bind to the ACE receptor, and so it can't get into the cells. That's what neutralizing antibodies are. XBB15 is rapidly decreasing. It provides, but the vaccine provides a significant boost in neutral antibodies rising against Eros AG5, Eros AG5, and FL151. So it does work for these upcoming viruses. Now here was a sort of a question here. I just left it here. I'll come back to this. 286, BA286, an Omicron variant, has 30 mutations to the spike protein. So the question was about its match for the Moderna XBB15. Now I'm going to just talk about ecological principle, about biological niches. When a biological niche is emptied, you get rid of what's living there. A different organism will move in. So if these lions that are kind of monopolizing the water supply here, if they move out, some of the animals can move in, another animal will move onto this little pod here. It will not remain vacant. So if the population, our population, is immunized against XBB15, EG5, FL151, and B286, will other strains move in to fill the empty?
It's actually like a peaceable kingdom.
It looks that way, but the lions are monopolizing the center.
Yeah, but
So-
the elephants are not sure.
Everybody's standing back a little bit. So the answer is, will they move in? Of course they will. And which strain will move in? A mild strain or a virulent strain? You tell me, because nobody knows. Okay, so that's an important ecological principle. So when you fool with Mother Nature, watch out. And now.
Oh, wait a minute now. I mean, this ecological principle is not an immunological principle.
No, it's ecological.
You're making an analogy.
No, it's not an analogy. If you remove the virus, if you remove BA1, Omicron BA1, some other virus will then flourish. They will not, the caseload won't go down because another virus is going to find its way to that same spot.
Another COVID virus or another virus generically?
Whatever virus is most suited for that niche is the answer.
Right.
Almost surely be a COVID virus, but because they're so uniquely
Right.
suited for that niche, for the angiotensin, something that blocks something from binding to the angiotensin receptor. The angiotensin receptor is sitting there saying, "Anybody want to bind to me?" And well, if BA5 is gone, then BA2 will come in. Kind of like dating for the prom.
I wasn't that lucky.
No, well, if the population is immunized against them, then those sites are blocked, aren't they?
No, it binds to the M spike protein of a particular strain. So the it doesn't sit on the receptor and block it. It sits on the M spike and blocks it. The receptor is still available for other strains.
Well, it's available for what it was purposely put there for.
Of course, it was available to receive angiotensin too, of course, but it's also available to any other strain that happens to be out there.
Other things that combine to it.
Yeah, anything.
But there's no AI involved in plotting the mutations of the virus. They're just rolling the dice basically.
Correct.
Some of those mutations, the change is going to be less good for the virus, not just that it will be different.
Let me put it in simple mathematical terms. If you take a watch that's like my watch here on my wrist, that's running 2 minutes slow, and I take a sledgehammer and hit it, and will that correct the problem?
You want to be exactly right twice a
Twice
day.
a day, right. It will not correct the problem. You have to have zillions of mutations to find a good one. Zillions. And that's not feasible in the human population. But viruses, there are so many units out there that 1 in a zillion is easy to find that good mutation. Almost all the mutations will be fatal. It's only 1 in a zillion will do anything that's helpful for the virus. But they are made to mutate. That's part of their capability to improve their ability to spread and not let everything become resistant to it. If it stands still, it will be eliminated. It's got to improve its own capabilities, and so it will mutate all over the place. So now another question: do the COVID tests work on the new strains? Good question. The home test to detect COVID antigen seems to work well for XBB.1.5, EG6, BA.2.86, the new one. And I assume it does FL151 because I never heard that it didn't. But a lot of the antigens are against the viral capsid. And that capsid is highly evolved and conserved through the generations. It's just the perfect capsid. And anytime a virus tries to change its capsid, it doesn't work very well.
Can you define that word?
The nucleocapsid, it's like a space capsule that encloses the viral DNA or RNA. That space capsule is so perfectly designed, you take one nut or bolt out of it and it doesn't work very well. So you can rely on the nucleocapsid to be conserved for very long periods of time.
And that's unique to a virus?
Yes. But its nucleocapsid has evolved over the zillions of years. Viruses have been around, and it just is conserved. It just doesn't change. There's another one that doesn't change in us. We have 2 kinds of keratin. You know the keratin on your skin? It's protein. There's keratin A and there's keratin B, which is within the cells called cytokeratin, which is like an internal skeleton. And the keratins are seen all through mammals. They're virtually exactly the same because they're so perfect in their role. You alter that keratin a little bit and it doesn't work very well. And so it's conserved through all million and all sorts of species. The same, very interesting how well that's conserved. Kind of off topic, but it's the same sort of theoretical part. Now, a PCR test can be designed to detect what they have done. A universal RNA segment, because you just want to know if there's COVID there, but you can make it strain specific if you want to know how many of this strain or that strain are there. So the testing works.
So when they tell you on the box that there's an expiration date, is that because they have no idea how long it will be good? Or
no, it's because of politics. It's same with drugs, any ethical drug. What a company has to do is they produce a product They show it's safe and effective, and okay, it works. And then every year for 3 years from that batch, they must retest it for potency in the original capsules or tablet form, whatever it is. And after 3 years, if it retains 95% of its potency, it's declared good for 3 years. And then everybody goes home. They don't say, okay, in the 4th year, send it back in. In the 5th year, send it back in. In the 6th year, and the 7th year, because the drug companies don't want that. They want you to say, oh, it's expired, I'll throw it out. It's crazy. Even the medical letter comes out probably every 5 or 6 years with statements about that. It just isn't true. The pills last at least 10 years. And it's usually they fall apart because the binder falls apart. You know it's falling apart. The drug doesn't go anywhere. And so when they said the COVID tests were good for a certain amount of time, it's because they were tested for that amount of time.
Right.
And they're not allowed to know anything else. If they've tested it, that's all they can know.
So based on,
And so they've continued to test them. And of course, they're perfectly potent.
so based on what we know today,
They're still good.
if I have tests that are, I don't know, they say that they expired, I don't know, a year ago or whatever.
They're still good. And when if you looked at the ads, it's now free again. You can send for them. And the ad said, or the brochure, what it was, it said, the expiration date may say such and such, but they are still good. It's the original batch that was sitting around.
So then I shouldn't be throwing away my old ones,
No,
but I probably should use them in the sequence of when I bought them.
You might as well, but they all work.
But they still degrade over time.
They will over
Because-
time, but time hasn't come yet.
Because of all kinds of chemical oxidation and other kinds of reactions going on all the time. So they do degrade over time. So you can still do the test, but it may not be as good or as accurate as if it were.
So a second question about that. Which is more likely when it degrades, that it will show a virus that isn't there, or that it won't show a virus that
Won't
is
show.
there?
Well, it'll be a negative test.
It'll be a false negative.
False negative.
Remember on those tests, they also show you a positive to make sure the thing is still doing its job.
No, we won't turn a negative test positive.
The control,
It's another indicator on it.
but the control indicator is a different chemical reaction.
Oh, it is?
It just says the reagent, it just says the reagent is doing what it's supposed to do.
It's doing another test, kind of a test on the reagents.
Does the storage temperature make a difference if you keep them in the fridge versus in the summer?
They didn't say.
Didn't say.
Okay.
They didn't say. It's a good question. That's a very good question. Because you could take that original batch, throw it in the deep freeze.
Yeah.
And it may be good in 10 years.
They probably never tested it like that.
That's a good
But it's
good
probably
point.
tested.
And or freezing it may degrade.
May
the whole
degrade it.
thing.
It may be put it only in your refrigerator, but it's a good question.
Yeah.
Because you could say, well, what am I going to do with this original batch that's sitting around the warehouse? Maybe I should cool it down and maybe we'll get 10 years out of it.
Well, you send it to a.
Is there anything done in
It's
terms of
a lot of money.
accelerated? Is there anything done in terms of accelerated degrading testing? I mean, that's typical in most
Well,
semiconductors and stuff like
degradation is
that.
when you put it out in the sun, I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you anything, really.
No.
Well, no, the
What
question,
they tell you is store it
the
in
que-
a between such and just such, let's like room temperature.
Yeah, with temperature.
They
Yeah,
tell you room temperature. They don't say put it in your oven.
the question is if I am told to keep it below refrigerator temperatures, and I take it out sometimes and I put it back in the refrigerator, take it out sometimes, put it back in the refrigerator. Is there any testing that's done that raises the temperature or something like that so that in the
Well, I
same
doubt that
period of time
I
you
doubt
can
that
get,
that they do freeze thaw technique, and see how.
well,
how
freezing and
it
thawing
degrades.
would be
They might have, but
obvious,
They're not going to get
but
involved in publicizing something like that. It'll create chaos.
Chances are.
Oh, I had it out of the refrigerator for 5 minutes. I better call the doctor.
but is that done in a sense to get us a preview of the decay of something or other? I mean, for instance, if you look at your cell phone or something like that, it's tested by putting it in an environment that simulates 10 years of lifetime in a year, because otherwise they would never get the cell phone accepted by the military.
Doing that, and therefore, if it's done, it's not publicized, and it's, right next to the Heinz ketchup recipe.
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
so
it
now
should be
let's
done
go.
though. Yeah.
Now we've talked about what we know, and now we're going to talk about what we don't know. Okay. How much protection from current strains is provided by past COVID protection, category 1, past COVID immunization, category 2, and hybrid immunity, which means, which I have, past infection and immunization. Now, those seem like fairly simple questions. Okay, you're going to a morass of data now.
Questions or something.
Here's the data problem we have. Past infection. Does infection from one of the multiple strains provide a different level of protection from the current strains? Because there's plenty of different strains that people may have had. So how much protection did your strain and his strain? Who knows? If you've had a previous COVID infection, which strain did you have? That's a pretty good question. Now, the COVID test, whether they're antigen or PCR, identified antigens or RNA segments found in all strains. The test was designed to establish the presence of COVID virus, nothing more. Because they want to know if you had COVID. They don't want to know which strain you had. Were the second specimen saved? All those snot things? I doubt it. So,
Matter of fact, they tell you to throw them away.
so well, I'm talking about in the labs. You went to Mount Auburn, got PCR. They could be retested for unique segments of DNA if they stored properly to identify a specific viral strain. Can you imagine everybody saying, I had COVID in July of 2021. Can you get mine? Because I got to go to my doctor's office and tell him what he's got. Can you imagine the doctor? Oh, God.
But they do some of that to get the DNA profiles. There is some subset that is broken down to understand these different variants.
Oh, they can do it, yes.
Yes,
For
somewhere.
But every test, I'm talking about all the people.
Oh, no, that's great.
You
But
go, so you want to go to your
subset is
doctor,
done.
and yes, or no, it hasn't been done. That's how you know what's out there. But for you to get yours, and then we have to go see the doctor, and the doctor, my sympathies with the doctor. You got all these strains on this crazy graphic that Slate is showing, and I got to know when you had it, and even the strain doesn't. It's just a morass.
But I have this device that I put in my toilet so that when it flushes, it tells
The
me.
MRI,
It tells me what kind of cold I am.
MRI sends you an email of what you had.
It sends me, it's right.
It sends you an email.
Did you see it? Send me an email. Did you know that?
You're not gonna get it all sequenced, so it's.
Oh, it is. The device I have.
So I think the next category, past infected protection. So if you've had COVID, we don't know how much protection you have against the current strains. Okay, we just don't know.
But isn't the fact that people have got multiple COVID infections this positive in terms of saying that previous infection will preclude subsequent infection?
Some of them. It precludes some of them.
Because
well, it doesn't preclude infection, it precludes serious disease.
right. So I mean, because the argument could be made that you got infection from variant 1, and then you were not protected against variant 2
Exactly.
for whatever reason.
Exactly.
And so therefore you were symptomatic again.
Right. And I have to know, like the doctor point of view, I have to know what you had, what's out there, and how much protection you might or might not have. Well, it gets a little more complicated.
There's also survivor bias, right? Because you've lived through it.
There you go.
You're probably better off for the next one
Right.
coming around.
So how much does past immunization protect against COVID strains? The XBB virus, 1.5, is as far genetically from SARS-CoV-2 as SARS-CoV-2 is from the original SARS. It's pretty far away.
Far in
Just
what sense?
genetically, numbers of mutations.
Yeah, but where are the mutations?
That's the question.
Right.
See,
That's the question, but we don't know what
that's not
strain.
that simple.
No, it isn't. Nothing's that simple.
The fact.
Nothing is that simple. I just laugh when I see this stuff. And hybrid immunity. Much of it's called imprinted when you got it. Imprinted hybrid immunity was acquired when the original Omicron was circulating. That's when that big spin. How much does this immunity extend to XBB, et cetera? How much? Okay, well, that sounds like a simple question. Now, no, it's not. Now we have only one study, this recent Singapore study. They had an XBB 1.5 wave in Singapore, and they have good medical records and a small footprint, and so they got the good data on hybrid immunity. And they studied the breakthrough infections by BA4, BA5, and an XBB subvariant, not 1.5, but another. So now, hybrid immunity provided by pre-2022 Omicron variants, with those variants, the original SARS-CoV-2 rather, did not confer any additional, I should put additional protection against XBB.1.5. Just didn't confer any. Hybrid immunity from previous BA2 infection provided infection against BA4 and BA5, but less against XBB, especially to XBB over time since the original infection. That it means you had waning immunity. So not only what you had, but when you had it.
Well, Jerry.
I think I had it in February. What was it, March? Honey, when was it? It's like this old guy, two couples having dinner, and one guy says to the other guy, "Oh, we had a terrific restaurant the other night. Terrific restaurant." Oh, the other guy said, "Oh, what's the name?" "Oh, it's the name of a flower. Name of a flower." He goes, "Tulip? No. Rose? Yes, that's it. A red flower, rose. Rose, what was the name of the restaurant?"
Now, Jerry, over the last year,
you gotta,
over the last year, a
Yes.
year ago, I got COVID.
it's hard to tell jokes just off the cuff. Go ahead.
But over the last year, I have not felt sick. So I've assumed, maybe incorrectly, that I therefore have not gotten any.
You have assumed, you've assumed that that's not correct because you have asymptomatic COVID.
Well, that's so.
So
my
therefore
question
you-
Therefore is, over this last year, is there a high probability that I've gotten non-symptomatic to a variety of strains?
Probably
Which
not.
may have increased my.
We'd know that. People would have reported that. Somebody would have done a study to report that.
That's
It's probably
tough to
not.
do, though.
It is tough to do because
Tough
you
study.
get serum antibody titers.
Yeah,
You have to,
that's
for
tough.
asymptomatic
I'm not
people,
sure it's done.
maybe not, you might be right. You have to get serum antibody titers on the people because you can't measure secretions every 2 weeks and things like that. You got to get antibody titers, see if they spike.
No
titers.
testing, no testing was done on me.
Right.
Well, look at, maybe if you go to the MWRA data, you can say it really didn't peak if they had a lot of asymptomatic people, it would have peaked in the water supply. You would have had peaks in the water supply, but we didn't. So it'd be very difficult to do that. So just a little technical wording.
It's probably the same thing as with flus and colds.
Right.
I mean, there are flus that circulate and colds that circulate. Not everybody gets them, but you may have gotten it and been asymptomatic because your body was able to resist that.
But to say it was likely is a different question. Yes, it's likely.
Right.
It's a different question.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I look at it that way.
I think with the MRI data, I think not, because you'd have spikes by disease, clinical manifestations of disease. They will get dissociated. So the technical term is differential quantity and quality of imprinted protective immunity varies with the virus type and date of past infection. To make matters worse, the above isn't even the real problem. COVID evolution. The strains change so fast, we just said this before, that constructing an updated immunization and testing it with 2 shots 6 weeks apart, and then studying its effect for 6 months results in an outdated study. BA 2.86 is coming. New strains inevitably emerge during that time, so the updated immunization can be obsolete by the time its efficacy is established. And you still have to get it out there for immunization. You got to take over Foxborough again. Hope we didn't during the football season. You got to take it over again.
What's that pictorial of?
That's a viral. What do you call that? It's a
Titration.
It has a name to it.
Rose.
Yes. No, it has a name to it.
That's his wife's name.
It's like a hierarchy, but it's made in a circle for some reason.
Yeah, but the colors mean what?
Nothing. It was just a graphic of viral
Oh, that means
evolution.
more than that.
It has a name to it.
You can take that as a project for the next.
Okay.
No, it has a name to it. It's a kind of diagram.
You can
I
take,
don't know it's a diagram.
you can take the picture, put it into Google and say, what is this?
Is that right? Now, so Moderna updated XBB.1.5 generates, but it does generate a strong response to BA.286. Now, right now, BA.286 is causing 0.5% of the disease in September 13th. Its prevalence over the coming months is really unknown. So given all this data that the CDC says, a booster is recommended for everybody. Hey, that's all they can do. They're just overwhelmed by all these different factors that come in. So this is a cover from an old comic book called Mr. Natural. If you can't read it, it says, Mr. Natural, what does it all mean? And he says, don't mean shit.
No, it's don't mean shit.
Don't mean shit.
She is, you have to say it right.
And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That was very, very good. Excellent.
I have another question.
All right.
Jerry, you're no, I have my knowledge of immunology is zilch, or what I've inferred from the various press things, talking to expert where the reporters have talked to experts. But you seem to have focused only on direct immune responses, as opposed to the kinds of indirect responses I hear are there, and that when you get a shot, say, you don't get immunization only against the particular virus and the particular structure, but that there are other kinds of immunity that are conferred. Can you comment on that and its importance?
Yeah, well, when you look at delayed immunity with the lymphocytes, you don't forget you were infected. Your antibody titers descend. You had mumps as a kid. You had very low antibody titers to it in your blood if you had mumps as a kid. You have it now. But the lymphocytes are ready. They don't have to learn how to make it again. They retain that memory. So if you're exposed to mumps, you zoom out with additional antibodies. And that's your delayed immunity through the lymphocyte system. So there are two ways you get it, but they sort of work on the same mechanism of recognition of what's there. The immunoglobulin binds to the target, and then the lymphocytes recognize that. So and that memory is retained.
Yeah, if I understand it correctly, there are DNA fragments that are maintained as signatures.
Memory of them.
Yeah, many of them. And so that's the history.
Right, but it knows how to do it.
Right.
It doesn't have to figure it out again.
It says, I've seen this before, and here's
so as your viral titers start to rise, you immediately have a big response. It doesn't take you 2 weeks to get a big response. Just do it over a couple of days.
And so
you limit the number of viruses that are around.
So your response occurs quicker, and you can therefore annihilate the virus before
it really gets ripping.
Takes hold.
Yes.
Ted, go ahead.
Yeah. So I want to just go back quickly to the beginning of the thing again. We have these people who are supposedly knowledgeable. I'm not going to criticize them for their lack of knowledge, but they're supposedly knowledgeable about how viral airborne viruses are transmitted. Yet the behavior of the public health system is a complete antithesis to that. We have people, for instance, on the beach being essentially told to sit at least 2 arms lengths apart from anybody else on the beach, despite the fact that there's no evidence that the virus has ever spread on a beach from one blanket to another. It's different from other kinds of beach blanket bingo viruses, but this particular one is airborne. How come we have this level of misinformation, misdirection, or something like this on the part of the public health authorities when they should know better?
That'll be my talk next week. That it was tuberculosis transmission was understood in the 30s, and aerosolization, and the strobe lights showing aerosolization. And if you look at the air exchange on a beach, it's so great if you have even in the slightest movement of air, that virus gets so diluted out so quickly, it would be almost impossible to find one virion, and no virus has an infectivity of 1. I mean, you got to find a lot of them for one of them to take hold. And it made no sense from anybody who knew anything from pulmonologists. We used to laugh at what they were saying when they said it. It made no sense. They didn't ask a pulmonologist, and they had plenty of political things going on trying to satisfy a lot of masters. And they said things that simply didn't make any sense. So when you ask, why did they do that? You can't find a medical or scientific basis for it. You have to find another basis for it. You just have to.
So
so in other words, everything we were
6-foot rule
told
that
basically
everybody talked
was
about was,
false.
The 6-foot rule was
No, you got it.
when the air is static. That's when the air is static.
Okay, so
You're gonna have a 6-foot rule works this way. It's not that you have COVID and you walk in around and walk out. It's that you're sitting here for an hour and a half listening to me talk. And so the aerosol, the suspension of particles in air is an aerosol. Suspension of aerosols of the virus builds up. So your opportunity to get the virus becomes greater over time.
right.
Nursing homes, they all sit in the common room in their wheelchairs, with strapped in, and they all sit together. That's how they pass it around. A breeze on a beach dilutes it out so fantastically in a second that you don't have the buildup of concentration. It's diluted out.
So why in supermarkets did they want everybody to walk this way on aisle one?
So because you don't cough in somebody's face, because people will do that.
Yeah, but coughing doesn't transmit this thing. It's ordinary breathing that's the dominant form of
The coughing
transmission.
provides the loaded aerosol.
So the
Yeah,
coughing
if
is
you're
accelerant,
in
if you will.
very close range, that
Yeah.
stuff falls out of the air immediately,
It does.
essentially.
Well,
But the
some
stuff
do.
that
Some
that
are,
gets
some are, no, Ted, some are aerodynamically dense and fall to the ground, like pine needles, and some are aerodynamically stable, and they float around like a paper plane. They float around for a good while.
That's what SARS.
yeah, except for the supermarket. The supermarket is
Well, you're talking like a public health official.
Yeah, well,
I'm talking like a doctor.
No, I.
This is metric and feet and inches. This is metric and feet and inches. The gears don't go for that.
Yeah, no, you're.
the supermarket is the least likely place
Public
to
health and
spread the
personal health are
virus.
two different
Hold on,
things.
Ted. We got too many people talking at once. Please wait till everybody else stops before you start talking. Go ahead.
As I was saying, public health and personal health are two different disciplines.
Yeah. Ted, did you have additional comments?
Yeah. The first thing you have to do is understand that when you exhale the air, if you're ordinary breathing, singing, talking, whatever, it's warm and moist. And what does it do? It immediately basically acts like a balloon around your head. So if you're in an environment that's naturally colder, like a supermarket, the stuff ascends to the ceiling almost immediately. The prospect of you being able to, as I said, other than spitting or transmitting, big chunks of stuff, the prospect of you being able to transmit it in a supermarket is almost zero because of that environment.
It's
extremely well ventilated, and it should have been very easy from the minute that the story about the Biogen meeting at the Long Wharf Marriott came out. It was instantaneously obvious to the physics community what was going on. I don't know why it took the biomedical community a lot longer to figure it out. It had nothing to do with touching.
The biomedical community, it was the CDC. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah, okay, well, all right, pieces of it.
We were all laughing about it. It didn't make any sense.
Okay, because it had nothing to do with touching your hands. It had everything to do with standing in line around the coffee machine.
Yeah.
It had nothing even to do with sitting in the room when they were giving talks, because the ceilings in those places are high, but the ceilings in the coffee line are low, and you're in a confined space with relatively crappy ventilation.
Do you remember the Bellevue Stratford Hotel in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
They had the first recognized spread of Legionnaire's
disease.
And the people were in all these different rooms, and they say, "Well, what room were you in? What room? And how long were you there?" And it took a long time for them to see the common denominator. That was everybody had to go out through the lobby.
Yeah.
And the chiller in the lobby for the air conditioning was a culture bath for the Legionella.
Yeah.
And that was where it was from.
I was in that damn
everybody
hotel.
crossed through, but they were looking for the rooms rather than the one common denominator. So it took them a number of weeks.
I was in that damn hotel for a conference for a week.
So Ted, did you ever go to the checkout line on a busy day?
Absolutely.
The cash registers are a real risk.
Yeah.
They were a real risk because they're going to counter everybody.
Yeah.
And
they were close to everybody.
Close to everybody.
Yeah.
And all that stuff.
Yeah, but still, the problem is again that the air transport in the vertical column is much greater than transport in the horizontal column.
Right, but
that did not stop cashiers from getting sick in large numbers.
The bottom line is it's a three-dimensional vector, so that you have horizontal, you have vertical, and you have
front to back,
Front to back, there we
side to
go.
side, up and down.
Thanks for a great talk, Jerry.